This is Jordan, your host, and the team Corey, Edwin, and Udon. Today's podcast, we're focusing on JRPGs. But before we do, let's go around and discuss what we did this week. Corey?
Well, I played a lot of Final Fantasy VII. There is a ton of micro games in that, so I'm just playing a bunch of things from cards to... I made it to the Golden Saucers, so it's like the boxing thing, the motorcycle thing, and whatnot, so it's just like all these mini games I gotta get through.
Not to enjoy, you have to get through them like they're a chore.
Well, like it's like the part in some games where they're like, hey, remember those mini features that we spent all this time developing? You have to play them all right now, at least once. And I'm like, okay, let me do this. So I'm about to do this chocobo race because it's never like you play the feature. It's like this roundabout way of like, but before you can race a chocobo, you have to get a bunch of items to feed the chocobo so that it likes you. And to get those items, you have to fulfill these quests for that guy to give you the item that you need. And it's like, okay. Also, we took all of your party away, so it's just Cloud. So everything that you have to fight, you have to do it by yourself. It's like, damn it. But some Fortnite, some Helldivers last night, and Trinity Fusion. Which is a Metroidvania roguelike game similar to like Dead Cells. I think Edwin was watching me play a little bit of it.
No, I don't know what the name was called.
Yeah, it's okay. It's weird because like it has like a similar look of Metroid Dread, but I don't know. There's something about it. I think it's because like the procedural generation of it doesn't have that handmade flair.
Procedural generated Metroidvania. That sounds kind of annoying.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it's when you procedurally, I kind of hate and like procedural generation and some stuff, but like some developers use it.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and some developers use it because they're like, our world is so massive, but then it's like, yeah, but now it's empty and everything kind of looks the same because you're just generating through like these assets. Like the world in itself is kind of cool, but I don't feel like I'm progressing to like a new area. Granted, it is just a demo. The controls are kind of not as responsive as I would like them to be, but it's not unplayable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had downloaded the Peach game demo. I haven't played it yet. And I downloaded the Dragon's Dogma demo, but I haven't played that yet. I thought it was just a character creation, but apparently it's more than that. Udon, I'm assuming that you got into that a little bit.
Well, like I said, it wasn't the demo. I was actually playing the first game since that's been on sale quite frequently, and I finally just picked it up just out of curiosity because I had never played Dragon's Dogma. I hear everyone raving about it. I was expecting something fantastic. I think anyone might have been hyping that game up a bit too much. I'm less than impressed with it, honestly.
It is an older game, so like if you were to hold it up alongside like other games at the time that one came out, which I don't know when Dragon's Dogma came out. I want to say 2014.
Here's the thing, I could, and I already thought of multiple things that were like better and better looking that came out around the same time. It's like part of it is just like the looks of the game, but part of it like is the mechanics itself, which partially like objectively and subjectively I can go into different things about it because it's like honestly I think the game looks like hell, and I'm not just talking about the fact that it has like old graphics can still look great, and I don't mind the graphics at all. I love my retro games, graphics or not. I'll play Battlefront 2 and still think it looks good, but game is ugly as shit. Like, there's no art style to anything. Like, everyone's just like this hideous monster. All the NPCs are ugly as shit. The character creator's awful. You can't make anyone look even halfway decent. I'm like, man, I should just make a fucking monstrosity because honestly, I can't make anyone look even halfway decent.
It's kind of like the Oblivion character creator.
Yeah, kind of. And like, The other thing was is that like they introduced the whole thing. Not only that, the game's like, holy fuck, pop up city, Jesus Christ, make a goddamn tutorial. Holy fucking shit! Every 2 seconds, it was like pop up, pop up, pop up. Here's a new system. Here's a new system. Here's a new system. I'm like, I've been playing for like 40 minutes. Calm the fuck down, Jesus.
We probably cover more of that too, because that very much
Bam.
seems like a Japanese company to like Japanese game development style. Is like UI stuff, and I'm sure that I'll bring that up later. That
Yeah.
game. Wait, are you playing Dark Arisen or the actual original?
Like no, it's like the Ultimate Edition. It's Dark Arisen, so it's the first one with like all the
Okay.
DLC and shit added to
So
it.
Dark Arisen came out in 2013. So it is
Either way, I don't
oh,
care.
what
Mass
is
Effect
that?
still looked better, like a
Yeah,
lot better.
I love that
I mean, I
game.
do. Yeah,
God, Mass Effect was
fucking
so
cool.
awesome.
We'll definitely talk about that next week.
And not to like say not to harp on it because we have other things to talk about, but the last thing that really bothered me was the stupid fucking what is it, pawn system? Because it's like, oh, here's a bunch of lifeless goons that'll just follow you to the death because they don't have any autonomy. I'm like, great. So y'all just figured out, you literally figured out a way to cheat me out of having characters in your game that I could get attached to and give a fuck about. Cool. That's awful. Fuck off. I don't know. After everything I've heard about the game, I was expecting this fantastic experience, and I'm just like getting a little annoyed here. Don't know why I'm wasting my time with this crap.
Well, it is Japanese company's approach to Western
It's
style RPG.
Capcom, and honestly, I can see the Monster Hunter blood that they spilled all over it,
Oh
especially the
yeah,
combat system. I'm just like, Capcom, really? Can you not do anything else? Fuck.
yeah. They're like, well, you want this or Resident Evil?
We can do two things.
Okay, yeah, we got two things. We used to do Mega Man, but we stopped doing that too.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that was part of yours, but since you have anything else to say about what you did this week? If not, I'll guess I'll just go into what else I did besides shit on
Yeah, no,
Dragon's
you
Dogma.
can keep going. That's fine. I pretty much covered everything that I was gonna say, anyways.
Yeah, so besides Dragon's Dogma, playing more Cyberpunk, having a relapse into other gotcha games, and went back to playing Blue Archive and fucking tried out that Niket Goddess of Victory, unironically kind of fun.
Yeah, is that the?
That's the one that's like a third person, like tactical shooter with the jiggly boobies and butts.
Oh, okay. I always call it Nike.
Oh yeah, that.
It's technically pronounced Niket. Here's the thing:
Okay.
if you saw, like most of you, whether you liked it or not, have probably seen a screenshot of it, so you'll know what I'm talking about if you saw it.
Yeah, it's just the over the shoulder like gun game that's like, hey, look, two B's in it. And you're like, we all know
Yeah,
why. What was that other one you said? It was blue something?
Blue Archive. It's a fairly popular one from
I
Nexon.
feel like I've seen that
Again,
one.
you have, if you've spent time on the internet and you like anime, you've seen fan art of the characters somewhere somehow.
Oh, okay, yeah, I have seen this.
But aside from that, not a whole lot. Stopped with the Animal Crossing because again, it was becoming too much work. I was just like, I'm kind of done with this for now. But yeah, just having a relapse into more gotcha games and trying. Oh, I also started Persona 3 Reloaded for the first time. So far, it's pretty good. I still prefer 5 as a whole so far, but other than that, it's doing pretty good. I haven't played too much of the original Persona 3, the only Persona game I haven't gotten super into, but I think it's good so far. I have the original on the PS2 that I need to get into. I only recently bought it though, so I need time to actually play that one.
So Udon, what did you like? What did you like of the difference between 3 and 5? What made 5 better than 3 to you?
Uh, it's hard to say, but I feel like 3. There's a reason why people only talk about Persona like 3 through 5. I don't know a whole lot about 1 and 2. All I know is that they're very different in sense that they're much darker. I think the more appeal they got to the mainstream, the more people liked them. And I think that was part of the problem. Persona 3 was like starting to come out of that and being more approachable for people. I believe, and this is just me talking my ass, this is just what I think. But 5 to me, I don't know. 5 just I like the style of it a lot more when it comes to just like the UI and the music and stuff. And not to say Persona 3's music is bad. I love the fucking music, but I just like the type of music better in 5. I like the setting better in 5. 5 seemed a lot more realistic. 3 seems to almost take place in like, it's not fantasy obviously, but it doesn't seem as real because you're like, you go to school on this artificial island and it's a lot more I don't know how to say it. It's a lot more just like out there in terms of like the fantasy of it all. You have to. So basically, in Persona 3, the idea is that like everyone has these special powers that you fight at midnight of every night. You fight these shadows in this big tower called Tartarus that come out every night at midnight and basically fuck everyone's shit up. And you're part of this like thing at school to help get rid of them, and you have a special power called Persona that can help deal with them. Again, I can't go super into the story because I haven't gotten into it super far, at least with 3, but 5, it's a bit more engaging, I guess. 5, it's almost the same thing, except you're like infiltrating people's psyche to fight shadows to help them change their minds on stuff. You're basically playing like a Robin Hood vigilante-esque character. Um, Helping right the wrongs of the world, but as the story goes on, you kind of take it too far and shit starts going wrong for you, and you have to fix it, kind of lose your way a bit. And I just find in general, I think the biggest thing is that a lot of the characters in 5 I vastly prefer um, over 3, because every Persona game, the biggest thing, one of the biggest draws is the characters. And every Persona game has like a character that's like your best friend. And in 3, this guy called Junpei, which is probably like the most blandest motherfucker in the world compared to Ryuji in 5, who I like immensely more. The characters in 5 I just liked a lot more. 3, I like, I think maybe her name was Mitsuki. I think it's the red haired chick and the robot girl. Again, they have way crazier characters. Cat, go away from the microphone. Go away. Don't play with the microphone. Um, I'll get into it more when we're talking about JRPGs. It's hard to quantify, especially since I haven't gotten super far into 3 to learn it more, because the general mechanics on fighting and stuff is largely the same. So it's not necessarily the gameplay. I think it's the stuff that surrounds it that makes the difference between why I like 5 better than 3.
Nice.
So that's what I did this week. So Edwin, what did you do this week? Were you sick again?
No, I'm not sick anymore. But I did I got into a bit of nostalgia. So pretty much I was playing an idle game called Idle Apocalypse, and I ended up getting to a point where I literally just have to wait. So then I couldn't really do anything on my phone every couple of hours, just trying to play that because I had to wait for like days and such.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how far I got. So I downloaded a different game to keep me busy from that, and then I just ended up downloading like Farmville thing that I used to play called Farmington. So now that just keeps me busy when the Apocalypse one, does not have my attention. But then I just started going down this rabbit hole of the past, and then I was thinking about Paper Mario, and I couldn't play Paper Mario Thousand Year Door because that releases in like what a month. So it's like I gotta play a different Paper Mario, one that I've only played once in my life, which is Super Paper Mario. So I just started playing that, and it's still as good as I remember, though the way I've been playing it, just like the emulator and all that. I had to like make my Xbox controller into a Wii remote, so that was a difficult thing to do, but I still managed to get it to work. So now I'm just playing Paper Mario on my computer, Super Paper Mario on my computer, and it's just really funny.
Yeah, I remember. I only like 2 Paper Mario games. I don't really care much for Super as a whole. I think the writing and the dialogue is still there, but I hated the gameplay change. I wanted them to keep the turn-based stuff in. I didn't really care for the overworld, just regular jump on head in real time sort of thing. I found it incredibly boring and not nearly as like interesting as the turn-based RPG thing. But at least the characters and stuff were still pretty good.
Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff I don't remember, but it is a lot slower. Um, there's like two of the same thing, but it's like one's the easy mode, the other one's a hard mode, where it's just like, oh, there's like not as much fighting as what you'd expect compared to the other Paper Marios in like the regular campaign. But so they made like 200-room trials. It was like, oh, this is where you're gonna get your battling out, where it's just like you have 5 minutes per room to find the key and then go to the next room. You have to go one room at a time. There's no shortcuts or anything, so It's like 100 rooms of just fighting, but there's 2 of them, so you got 200 rooms of fighting. But at the end of each of them, you get a. I had to look this up because I don't remember anything or what the point of doing that was because I really didn't want to do it. But like the point of getting it is there's like these characters which are your superpowers, and they're called pixels. So at the end of each of them, there's a special one. So they're pretty much required for some parts, just some parts of the campaign. So do them as early as possible, and then you'll just have some more help during the actual story of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I haven't really played anything else.
Nice. On my side, I've just been playing that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's actually been pretty cool. Nice to see the giant open world that they had now allowed you to finally get involved with. I know that at the very beginning of that Final Fantasy VII, you felt like you were enclosed in Midgar the whole time. So you just basically it's dark and gloomy, no light. So it felt really nice to finally be free, able to go out there and do stuff. Unfortunately, now that I've got myself outside in the world, leaving that place, there's a lot of shit to do, and it's just like not enough time to do it. So I'm like constantly just trying to go around and just discover what I can around different mechanics and such that they worked on. That was kind of nice. Kind of like some alchemy stuff that you do to like build and make your own kind of like items in the game. So you find stuff out there on your journey, and you can take all these different parts and pieces and put them together and craft something like a potion or something. And so, I mean, that was kind of nice. Being able to play as Red 13 is now a good thing to see too, because obviously I was stuck with it in the last game. You just had him as a companion, didn't really help out. So it was kind of sad to see, but now I see a lot of good things coming from it. Obviously, I just started the game, so there's a lot to see. So that being said, more Helldivers, as I have ranted in the past before. Helldivers 2 is amazing. Seeing that I came across it kind of seems like some sort of like solar flare or something like that, some sort of electrical storm or something that goes on where basically nothing works. You're trying to call in team members, you can't do that. You try to call in some sort of arsenal, some sort of weapon to drop, nothing that works. You're literally having to wait and hope that the storm ends to where you can finally do stuff to actually help get you out of that predicament you're in. That massive amount of, whether it be bugs or robots, you're constantly just at the mercy of the game, which again I love. It's really cool. And being that, I mean, it's been nothing but a great ride the whole way. And for all you listeners out there, definitely pay attention to these experiences that we're going through. I mean, literally myself being on this podcast, hearing last episode where we're talking about all these horror games and such, I just had to check into it myself. Udon was talking about that creepy piano thing in Mario 64. I had to go check it out. That was pretty intense to see. Along with that GameCube game. Do you guys remember what that game is called again? Is it
Eternal Dark?
Eternal Darkness, dude. You go onto YouTube and just look out the most random things that game will throw your way. It is insane. Literally, there was points in the game where it would make it look like your TV was just acting up, whether it was muting, it was your volume was going up and down. It was making it even seem even scarier, where it made it look like you were ready to delete a file in your game, going through all of that time, and it just was saying you had 2 options, and option 1 and option 2 were both the same thing, where you were basically had no other option but to delete your file, and it even watches you go through the phase of 10%, 20%, 50%. Okay, you've successfully deleted your file, and then you wake out of it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not supposed to be happening. There's just so many things going on in that game that I myself would I'd be hoping that they would want to remake it, because at today's day, that kind of technology that we have, it would be pretty dope to see that. And then last thing, I was watching, not playing. I understand I should be playing it, but what they were talking about, Corey and Udon, about Dead Space, the remake, that game is phenomenally well detailed. The amount of stuff that goes on, and as well as talking about where I was discussing about before, like, oh, you feel helpless. You have guns, you have plenty of weapons to use, but you are so screwed with the amount of shit that comes at you in the most random way, where you're walking down those corridors, those areas, and you're seeing vents, they just blast open and nothing comes out. So you're like, okay. And then you go to, what I saw, which was funny, was a guy thought he was safe by going through all this crazy amount of ass kicking he had to deal with. And then he was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the workbench. And then something jumps out of the fucking vent and starts attacking him mid searching through his shit. So he has to like, oh shit, back out and start to fight him. And it's just...
Sounds about right.
What? I'm sorry?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it's just, it's crazy shit all around. It was just like insane. You're never safe, basically. You're always thinking that there's some sort of enclosement you go into and you're like, okay, I'm good. There's nothing happening. Oh shit, and then it just comes at you again. You're like, god damn it. I'm trying to fucking go through my items and this is happening. It's just fucking nuts.
The difference between seeing that in the remake compared to the original, because the original, as far as I am aware, doesn't like have it's all scripted. Like there's no like random encounters, whereas the remake makes use of like a pseudo game director. So whatever that moment was with that guy, it was probably because the game decided he needed some excitement there and decided to spawn in a necromorph by him while he was trying to do something just to fuck with him. Whereas like any person can have different experiences with the game with the remake, because the game itself determines like when, where, how stuff will spawn most of the time.
That's a great way of doing it, because that's definitely keeps you ass on your toes for sure with just random fucking occurrences. Jesus Christ.
So the remake really is experience from the original.
It keeps everything the original has, and it improves and adds to it so much that it is one of, like I said, I will stand by. It's one of the very few examples of like the remake being better than the original in giving you everything the original had and then some, especially with the narrative as well, because in the original, Isaac didn't talk. Isaac never had a voice in the original, whereas in the remake, he actively talks, and they had to like kind of reinvent the wheel of the narrative around the basis that he can talk and has like actual like word I'm looking for
Character?
Fuck, I just had it. Character is part of it for sure, but it's more just like initiative. Like he's instead of them being, it's like, Isaac, I need you to go repair the fucking engines or the communicator or whatever, and he just stares at them, and they're like, all right, did you get that? Okay, all right. I can't. You're wearing a helmet. I don't know what that expression is, and yeah, but this one's
a cryptid of some sort, like an engineer cryptid. You're like, he just shows up, and it's like a Mr. Meeseeks.
Yeah.
Fix the ship, and he's like, okay.
But then like when the necromorphs first spawn, it's like he doesn't go, oh fuck, oh shit, oh fuck, oh shit. He's just silently running away, like, okay,
breathing heavier.
Yeah. But in the remake, instead of them telling him to do shit, they'll be like, oh, fuck, Isaac, the blah, blah, blah's down. And he's like, okay, I need to make it to the fucking engineering and do this, that, and the other thing. It's like, oh, look, he's a character. He does stuff. Cool.
His internal monologue is a comforting voice in a ship full of screams.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess I've seen it. I've heard it all. I've got no reason to show any emotion.
And, also, like... it's not like canonically or it's not canon that Isaac can't speak in the first game. It's just he was a silent hero.
He's just really bored.
Yeah, so like most of the game's story was because it was supposed to be more like, if I had to guess, me as the player, I am him, so the game is talking to me. And but like I know there's some controversy around Isaac talking when they initially like introduced it, because everyone's like, what? He didn't say anything. But
they could have fucked it up, but they didn't.
Yeah, it worked out really well. And justifiably, I know that people were like, oh, it's gonna fucking ruin it, but it's like he nailed it, so it doesn't actually ruin. Because if he was a terrible voice actor or whatever, that could have been annoying as shit. Or if he'd never shut up,
Actually, come to think of it, I'm going to look that up right now. I don't know if that's the same, if it was the same guy that did it in his voice in Dead Space 2 and 3 and did it in the remake or not.
I think it
Well,
might
I
have
always
been.
slept on the remake because I thought it was because I played like recent like when it came out. I like recently played the original, so I didn't really have a reason to play the remake. But so I just slept on it because I thought it was just the same game. It just looked nicer. So
Oh no, it is
I
so
guess I
much
gotta
more
play
than
it then.
graphics. Yes, you will love it. Like, here's the thing. I thought the same thing, and quite frankly, I wouldn't have bought the game, but luckily they put it on Game Pass, so I played it because I'm like, oh, don't gotta pay for it. I guess I'll try it now. And
I still got the 2 weeks trial of Game Pass, so I
there you
guess
go.
I can play it now.
Better get on
Um,
it.
And it has no loading screens.
Yeah, it's all
Seriously?
one seamless world. Well, technically, there's hidden loading screens, but you're never just
Yeah.
sent into a black screen. But that's to be expected. There's no such thing as a completely seamless world.
Yeah, it's
But
the same thing that God of War does. Like when you're like pushing the door open, it's and it goes into like a more of a cinematic transfer from like location to location. That's
Yeah.
because that's the loading screen.
Yeah,
Well,
because
He
I,
brings
I
out sock
Mario.
puppets, and he's like, "Look at me, look at me."
don't look at the screen. Look at me. Just said, Kermit the Frog here. I see you're at a loading screen.
Yeah.
But no, I played it like within the first hour. I was like, "Oh, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is not like I've played the original Dead Space so many times. I had I knew it like the back of my hand, and I was playing the remake, and I'm like, oh my god, no, this is an entirely new experience."
Yeah.
I
Did
guess I
they-
know what I'm doing this week.
Did they mention anything about doing a second, the second one, maybe?
I hope they do. I haven't heard anything about
yeah.
it, but God, I hope they do.
No news on an actual update of the second or third game. It was
Yeah,
mostly
it's
just like an anniversary, I think. So they redid the first game, and I'm sure EA was also like, "Hey, watch this," because
They love it when
Callisto
you
was
do
coming
this.
out like a month or two before it. So they're like, "Well, you guys made your own, and you used to work for us, so we'll just take the one everyone likes and make it nice again."
yeah.
Um,
And it is Gunnar Wright. He was the guy who did Isaac's voice in 2 and 3. He did reprise his role in the remake, so it's still Isaac's voice that you remember from like the other games where he actually had a voice.
Nice.
2 is so good.
2 is my favorite, and if anything, it's just because as much as I love the Ishimura, I like the setting better being in like a Planet City sort of thing. I like that better.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was planning a long time ago. We were like blueprinting out a Metroidvania game that was kind of inspired by Dead Space. Because it's like, well, what if we made like a scary like a Metroid that was actually like terrifying? And Dead Space is a great reference for that.
Things we could have talked about last week. Anyways, we
Yeah.
can continue on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all that I had. It was just basically going through experiences of watching other different kinds of horror. I don't know. I felt like I was hooked after hearing those stories, and I just started chasing down different things. I mean, I was even watching the remakes that they had for Resident Evil 2 and all that. So I was just checking out what they had, looking at like Leon going through his horrible days being as a cop. Just from I ran across. Yeah, I was going to fill up some gas on my Jeep. Oh look, there's a blood trail. Let's go look and see. Oh, zombies! Holy shit! Oh shit, more zombies! Let's get the fuck out of here in a cop car, not my Jeep. I just left it there full of gas. And then he just ends up tracing all this crazy shit when he was just like, I was just trying to get some gas. Like, what the fuck? And
he doesn't even work there. He's just stopping there. He's going to keep going because he's like, oh no, I was reporting to the department that's right outside the city limits. I just had to get gas.
He was basically probably done with work. He's like, God damn it, I got to work overtime. But yeah,
Paid enough for this.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I had. So that's all we did for the week. Let's go ahead and jump into some gaming news. Corey?
So I didn't really notice anything substantial. Again, like there is like the major topic thing still, and I'll mention the Sweet Baby Inc. thing. I guess that's like still ongoing.
Sweet baby.
I don't even
It's
think it's worth talking about, man. Fucking,
Yeah.
it's where those people thrive off the fucking
Sexual.
attention.
yeah.
It's literally, to me, it's literally the fucking meme where it's like our games aren't made for you anyways. Like big thumbs up and continuing to go
Yeah.
about your business.
Nice.
It's like I don't fucking care.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. But there was a lot of trailers and stuff in some announcements that came out. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Sinking City. That game had like a huge controversy around it a while ago with like the publisher and the developer or something like that. They even pulled it off the shelf.
Sinking City, was that a game?
Yeah, it's a Cthulhu game, like a third person like
Cthulhu, here we go.
noir.
That's a fucking curse though. There's Cthulhu as much as the mythos
Yeah.
is so cool. The fucking games and media surrounding it are usually shit.
I mean, Sinking City though, I have it and I started playing it and it does have some really cool like mechanics. It's a very interesting like obscure like third person style game. Like if you're into the mythos of Cthulhu, like you would really appreciate it. It's more detective than it is action from what I was noticing, of course. But I couldn't really get into it because I had just played the Call of Cthulhu and the story is the same. So I was like, I feel like I did this already because I literally just finished Call of Cthulhu and then I put that game in and was like, yeah, I think I need more buffering between these two games. So but-
you've played it. So what was the controversy around pulling it off shelves then?
No, I think it was just licensing and disagreements between the publisher and the developer, something like that. I mean, like I didn't really look too much into it. I just remember that they pulled it from the digital stores and they were taking it off of shelves. So it was like this weird. I own a copy of it, so maybe it's rare, but they sorted out the legal stuff and then they got to put it back on the shelf. I think what it was is they weren't getting enough money from the sales of the game, and it was, contractual agreements were not being met, kind of thing. But apparently it did well enough that they dropped a trailer for Sinking City 2. I would check out the trailer. It's pretty fucking awesome. I do like Cthulhu stuff, so it has a really strong, cosmic horror feel to it. And it's purely a cinematic trailer, so it's no gameplay. But if it's anything like the first one, it'll be very reminiscent of games like Evil Within or Silent Hill. Probably the later Silent Hills, not necessarily the early ones. So like Downpour or Homecoming. Granted, I know that that's not a good comparison because those games are very divisive amongst the Silent Hill fan base, but that's the play style. So, take it or leave it. The actual studio behind Ready Player One had made a cinematic announcement trailer for a game called Open, which is a Ready Player One themed battle royale. I don't care so much because I feel like battle royales, not that they're going away, it's just like we have plenty of them. I love them, so I will. And this is going to be kind of contrary to what I'm going to say later because there's another battle royale that I'm going to bring up, but it's kind of interesting that Ready Player One is doing one because it kind of fits, but I wonder if it's going to be more like the movie where you're looking for something and competing with other people in like mini games, or if it's actually going to be like PUBG. Also, the licensing that they have on Ready Player One is pretty powerful, rivaling Fortnite, I would say. Though Fortnite does have more anime, and like celebrities, I guess. But Ready Player One did have like a Gundam and Iron Giant and like Warcraft and some other stuff in the movie. So if it's anything like the movie's licensing, they might have some cool shit in that game. But again, it's a cinematic teaser of the garage where the car is, and you see the main character walk up and turn a TV on with a smoke portal. Graphics they're good. It's not like, oh my god, this is so crazy, but it's a licensed property getting into the battle royale arena. No pun intended, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking lame.
Yeah, it's we'll see when it starts to have more because I didn't like read into it either, so I don't know if there's like a description of what the game's actually going to be. It's just in parentheses on the title. It says a Ready Player One Battle Royale, but it doesn't show you anything that would lead you to believe that that's what it is. So I'm like,
Such
okay,
as trailers.
I mean, I've never even seen the movie, so
yeah. Well,
Good. Don't you saved yourself a couple hours.
it's an interesting concept, I guess, but it's basically just a.
Yeah, it's a shame
like,
they fucked it.
It's like Wreck-It Ralph, basically. You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
So
the
go
main
watch that
character's
instead.
trying
That's a
to
better
do
movie.
something. You know, yeah, but Wreck-It Ralph is better. Outward 2, I always mess up the
God
name of this game.
damn it.
But
that fucking
Outward,
game is
not Outland or whatever, they have a second one, and that game might be kind of fun for us to kind of try. I'm hoping it has a 4-player co-op. It is a very hardcore fantasy game in the sense of if you die and your backpack is somewhere, you have to go fucking find it. It's
I've played Ark before.
yeah, it's
No,
kind of funny.
Hang on, I've played Outward before. I played the first one, so pretty much every single quality of life that you've ever had in a video game, fast travel, mounting, any of that, all the stuff that makes it bearable and time saving, you got nothing. There's nothing. You gotta run everywhere. There's no horses. There's no mounts. There's there's hardly any saving. But
Well, here's the thing: as long
it's
as
just a super hard game, like because it just doesn't have any of the useful or helpful quality of life that most other games have.
It's just like going on an adventure as a merchant traveler with your friends.
It's like removing this quality of life isn't like a death sentence to me. It's just like, sure, remove it, but the gameplay that you're making me doing that's forcing me to interact with this that otherwise the quality of life would have me ignore better be fucking enjoyable.
Yeah.
It wasn't really. It was like I fell off that really quick. I did spend
graphics are kind of weird.
Yeah, I spent like an entire day just like because there's like clothes that this is the only pair of clothes that gives you like a speed boost in running because that's all you can do. But it's like merchant clothing, so I literally just got those and then just ran everywhere. And this took me like just to get a spell. It took me like an hour and a half just to run up a mountain.
It kind of gives me Two Worlds vibes with like the type of game. It's like a very much we made a game, you can play it.
Yep, that's definitely what it was.
Yeah, but it could be fun for us to try. Also, it's couch co-op split screen, which is kind of unusual for like a modern day game, especially something like that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that'll be better than the first. The first one was just like online 2-player. That's it.
No, the first one you can play it on couch co-op. I think if you have the physical or something, that's what it says on the back of the case. You know, because
that's the thing I never used, but I just did online. But it was only 2 people.
System Shock dropped a trailer, which is kind of cool because I've been seeing the development of that game. And if you don't know what System Shock is, it is basically a remake of a very old shooter game that was like probably one of the original cyberpunk dystopian shooters. It was in the same style of like Doom, but now it's like a full blown, just it kind of is like what all the old shooters did. Is it's a modernized 3D shooter game, but it's a cyberpunk themed Doom basically. I don't know if I'm doing this injustice by saying that because I know that it has a very strong cult following, which is why it exists, but that's just my observation. I didn't play System Shock. A lot of the earlier first-person shooter games that were on PC kind of go beyond me because I didn't have a gaming PC as a kid. I didn't start gaming on PC until like later, or going over to a friend's house or something to play like BattleNet, StarCraft, and whatnot.
I've never heard of System Shock.
It's a pretty cool trailer to check out. Tribes 3 was announced. If you haven't played Tribes, it's kind of a very fun monster team deathmatch type of thing. Not monster as in like the creatures, but like it's like 50 on 50, and it's like a capture the flag. You got jetpacks and you can fly, so it's just chaos. But it has a lot of like skill shotting. So if you're in a match with tryhards, you're probably going to get your ass kicked. But it's fun to play. Like the original like Tribes and Tribes 2 is fun to play. So it's cool to see that Tribes is getting a comeback.
Okay, I was a little confused because I thought you meant like it was Trine. That thing has like 5 games or something.
No. Let me see here. Some other stuff that happened was I'm just going through our things. There is an announcement of a new game being made by studio veterans from across the way. We have the Doom composer working on a game alongside people that used to be at Naughty Dog and Activision and id. And so they're stating that they're going to, they made an indie studio. Udon were talking about it a little bit in like a back and forth of like what qualifies as indie. And in this case, I know that it's independent because they're not underneath an umbrella of other corporations. But it was being advertised as like these industry veterans started an indie game, and it's like it has millions of dollars of funding. There's you don't just start a full blown studio with staff and salaries if you're an indie in the sense of like sitting at your desk in your own house developing games.
But I mean, it's like, what says you can't do that though? They could
Yeah,
just be
no.
their own money
I mean,
that
if
they
you
have
had
to use.
millions of dollars too, and then you could fund your own game, I mean, it's the same. But it's just kind of like, oh, okay, when it's advertised as like an indie game, like I always think of like Charming, like games that are like have like charming visuals and stuff. But it is interesting. It's another first person shooter. So there's a lot of shooters that I'm talking about today, and it's weird because they're talking about how they're like, oh, we're going to do something different, but they're making a cyberpunk first-person shooter. And I just mentioned that System Shock was coming, so I think that the people behind the game development will do a good job and make something really cool to see. But I have to see like an actual like right now it's just text of them announcing they're working on something. No actual
I
like
mean,
trailers.
I still don't even trust. It's like we have industry veterans. I'm like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Make a game or don't make a game. I've been burned too many times about people being like, yeah, from the people who bought you, blah blah blah. It's like, oh, I bet it's gonna be good, and then it comes out and it's fucking garbage. I'm like, great, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I remembered the advertising for a game called Brute Force on, I think Xbox, and
That was
I think
Xbox.
I have two.
God, that was
I
a
think I
good
have
ass
two
game.
copies of that game for some reason. What'd you say? You liked it?
Yeah, hell yeah. I think there was 2 copies. I think it was because you bought one for you and me. I think it was that was the way we were able to do
So we
LAN.
could play it.
Play
Yeah.
together because you could be like invisible or some shit with a lizard
But
or something like that.
on the box, it was like from the creators of Halo or something, or the publisher of Halo, and it's like, oh, I miss when they used to do that because they made me think that I gave a shit.
Exactly.
Like,
It's
but
not only
it's
that,
not
it's like
Halo.
publisher. It's like publisher. You didn't do anything.
You threw money at it and it came out. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, so that was just an announcement. Then let's see. There's a couple other like games. Helldivers has an update where there's flying bugs, so that's just what we need. And
Yeah.
speaking of like small tiny studios, Skull and Bones is performing worse than Suicide Squad, which is wild to me because
It's wonderful.
a game that was touted to be the first quadruple A game, which I'm assuming the A's stand for how much money they threw at something. Like, for it to just be performing that bad, and for Black Flag's numbers to be going up, it's like if I wanted to play a pirate game, I could play Sea of Thieves, or I could play Black Flag, which I probably have in some weird Steam bundle that I've bought a long time ago of like an Assassin's Creed collection. So you probably have like that game already. So it's like you don't need to spend $70 to have a pirate experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, you don't have to spend any money if you want to have a pirate experience. So there's
just
that.
Just go to the store, get a fucking paddle boat, and just go out into the ocean with a gun and just start playing
Yeah,
fucking
just find the
pirates.
biggest ship you can and paddle on out.
And also, but like because of Skull and Bones, now Sea of Thieves is no longer going to be Xbox exclusive because now you can get it at the PlayStation Store, and it's cheaper than Skull and Bones and a better game.
Yep, it's way better.
Yeah. And then to wrap up a couple things, I got a physical copy of the indie RPG that I worked on, so that's kind of cool. And I should be getting a couple other copies so that I can kind of see what pass them around to you guys if you want to copy.
Corey, what's the name of the game you worked on?
Yeah, tell us.
It's called Another Crusade, and it's a fun little indie RPG inspired by Mario RPG, which is a really fun game. We'll probably talk about that in a couple minutes here. Not Another Crusade, of course, but Mario RPG. I just had a remake. I know me and Edwin both had played it all the way through, I think December, 2 months ago.
Yep.
But before that, a couple other things. A battle royale was announced, Ascendant Infinity. I have signed up for the closed beta on that, so I have to get all that squared away because I kind of want to try it since I like battle royales. But
I'm starting to think I'm going to ban the word battle royale from our news.
Yeah,
There you go.
especially
That'll do.
this particular. It's kind of fun. It reminds me of this other one that came out, and I can't really remember what it is. It was like 80s themed, it was an 80s themed battle royale game that came out. Radical Heights. The game was like half finished. They were really trying. I think it was like an asset flip after like Lawbreakers and whatever that other one was. It was like a Gears of War style Paragon, something like that.
Paragon, yeah.
Yeah, so
flopped.
Yeah, they kind of just started pumping out this like Radical Heights game. It was like half finished, so some of the map, like you could still go in buildings, but there's like no textures or anything. And then, it just kind of fell off. It was at the height of the popularity of PUBG. Like PUBG was starting to like become like the thing everybody was watching on Twitch, and then Fortnite was like, "Hey, we can do that too." So then this game came out of nowhere, and so Radical Heights fell. But Ascendant Infinity is a very similar style game, but it has some cool elements, at least what I've seen in the trailer, where like you can become monsters and all this. It just looks crazy. So once I get my hands on it, I can kind of have a better idea. I'll reserve judgment until I play it, of course, because videos are what they want you to see. So I can't really make a super judgment call, except for saying things look cool. And then lastly, Jump has announced a game called Jump Assemble, Shonen Jump for those that aren't really familiar. So they're making a Pokemon Unite or a MOBA with Jump characters like Naruto and Goku and One Piece and all that. So we'll see. I mean, it's a free-to-play phone game. I'm sure that they'll have a console version as well. I'm sure everyone is going to play as Goku and Naruto all the time. So,
Hell yeah.
I don't know. JoJo's a shonen property. So
I didn't see any JoJo characters in the announcement, but I mean, I don't really remember because I only seen the trailer.
Well, how are they going to make money?
Yeah,
you announced Dio, and that's going to print money.
Yeah, that's probably what they're doing is holding off, right? And I've played Jump Ultimate All Stars, which is a very, very good Smash Brothers game. It's on DS. It was only in Japan because they made the other one, which was that.
Wait, I thought you were talking about the fucking fighting game.
The fighting game on console. That one looked
completely
weird.
lacked character facial animation.
Yeah, everybody looked
dead
weird
face.
in the 3D form.
The game.
I think the only thing that brought people to that game specifically, because there's like you can play as Yugi, and you're like, I want to play a card game while someone's trying to punch me in the face. It's just people just found that funny.
The Jump Ultimate All Stars game on DS was like it plays like Smash Brothers. You build your team like you're building out manga panels, and so the bigger the manga panel is, the more powerful version of that character, because you have a limit of like X amount of spaces, so that you could have 3 characters. You could have 2 really strong ones, or like one super powerful one with a couple supports. And like everybody was in that game. It was so huge and it was so cool. I would love for that game to have like a console port, and even I beat it, and it was like only in Japanese, so I was just going through menus, memorizing.
You even know when you won.
Yeah, I just was like unlocking characters, and was like, this is super cool. And I played that like I think back in like 2009 or something like that. But it's cool because the DS isn't region locked, so if you had like a Japanese game, you could just play it
Yeah, I remember you went through going to
And
the store to go get that. And you were like mind blown when you got it because for the DS, and you were playing that nonstop. There was just so many damn
yeah,
characters to choose from.
I don't think I've played a DS game more than that one because I typically don't play handhelds that much because I'm sitting in front of like the $600 console I just bought. So um, like I like playing my handhelds like if I'm like on the road or like on a plane or something, which doesn't happen often. So I don't really play them often. But then like phone games kind of took over where it's like, oh, a slide block puzzle, I'll just play this slide block puzzle, and then 2 hours goes by and you're like, oh, I could have been doing something else. But yeah, that's pretty much a bunch of game announcements that I have for today. And I watched I found out there was a Chrono Trigger OVA. I had never heard of this thing before, and so it's kind of a fun little video. It's obviously like old anime, but
Yes,
it's kind
very
of
old.
fun. um, and I didn't know it existed, so I was like, "Oh, this is a new Chrono Trigger thing for me to consume. That's kind of cool, And we'll probably go into Chrono Trigger more. I do like that game a lot. So, anyways, that's it from me. We can jump into the next segment on this.
Alrighty, so with our polls, as we had discussed, this is going to be about JRPGs. JRO. Yeah, it was about what was your favorite JRPG, and we had different choices of Final Fantasy, Persona, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and Xenoblade. Winner was Final Fantasy. What do you guys think of that?
I think too many people need to fucking expand their like gaming horizons.
I mean, Final Fantasy
Oh.
is, it's kind of like the reason why all of these other games are like still relevant, I guess. But I mean, granted, a lot of them, like the Persona franchise, is pretty old. It stems from the Shin Megumi games, and those go all the way back to regular Nintendo as well. It's just Final Fantasy became mainstream, and then everybody's kind of like, it's kind of like Gundam, right? Like Macross and Robotech were out, and then Gundam came out, and then it was so cool that everybody called giant robots, no matter what they were, Gundams. And so like they look at RPG games and be like, oh, it's like Final Fantasy. It's like, I mean, it's older than Final Fantasy, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Fantasy is the root of all RPGs.
I mean, not all RPGs, but it's definitely something that's incredibly popular.
Yeah.
Well,
I just never. I'm one of the few people who never got into Final Fantasy. All my JRPG experience comes from like mainly Persona, a little bit into Xenoblade, but other than that, I haven't really did my toe into too much JRPGs. Mainly because I don't know. I think a lot of my gaming has been stuff that I need to share with my friends, and a lot of them growing up weren't into those games either. So it was mostly Western games and stuff that I played. And to me, well, I would have liked to play. The only Final Fantasy game that I played and genuinely enjoyed was a spin-off, and that was Crystal Chronicles on the GameCube, which is an entirely different game. It
Oh
was like
yeah.
this
yeah.
four
Save
player
the crystal.
Who
It was
has to carry the lantern?
Yeah, it's a really dumb, stupid fucking game mechanic, but the game was so incredibly like niche because it was like this Diablo-esque 4-person co-op top-down action game RPG where in order to play multiplayer on it, you couldn't just plug in more GameCube controllers. You had to go out of your way to have the cords that connect your Game Boy to the GameCube, because then everyone's Game Boy acted as their own little like inventory management. And for some really fucking retarded reason, when they remade it and brought it to the Switch, which I was excited about because I was like, oh sweet, they're gonna remake that and bring it to the Switch. They're gonna make it easier to play with people. Fucking no, because when you play with other people, they have to do the phone app and connect the phone app to the game. I'm just like, what the fuck is this
Companion apps are like so hit or miss, but like, yeah, that's when you think about it in the long run, you're like, okay, so I buy the game for $60. Now I need to have 4 Game Boy Advances, and
Yeah.
I have to have 4 cables for each Game Boy Advance. So this is a very expensive game to play.
They did that too with
And-
that Link game too. That one,
Four Swords.
4 Swords. There was a Kirby one too that was like that. That was, I think, Forget it was Kirby had a cell phone. That was the gimmick.
Amazing Bear. That shit was fire.
He's got minutes. He's got limited minutes.
And
It's
here's
like, bro, we got to wrap this up. I got to pay after
the quest for the prepaid phone card.
Yeah. No, Final Fantasy though, I feel like it was like super popular because like even people that didn't play video games, like they, it's like the people that would make fun of me in like elementary school and stuff. Like, oh, you're probably playing Final Fantasy. It's like they know what it is, even though they don't play it. And then there's like, yeah, they play like Madden. They don't play anything else.
Oh yeah, everyone made fun of us for Halo. That was our thing. It's like, oh, they just play Halo. All they do is play Halo. That was the thing that made fun of our group for.
Yeah, they make fun of you when they're actually playing it themselves.
Yeah, because he's just mad he's not as far.
Son of a bitch. But
half my high school was missing when Halo 2 came out.
They all
should be.
It's a closeted nerds who don't want to admit they play video games.
Yeah, I remember they fucking pushed that game back so many times.
1,500 kids get sick.
Yeah. I've played hooky one time to play a video game, and now I'll never do it again because it was Scarlet and Violet.
God.
But Final Fantasy, I can't really, and to me, it's a lot of subjective things that I don't care for about the game. Again, I love anime. It's an anime-esque game, not super anime. It has its own style, clearly, but still just like, scrawny blonde kid, don't get me wrong, Cloud has muscle, but that's a giant hunk of iron that probably weighs 5 times as much as he does. He swings around like it's nothing.
You're like, that's made it look cool, so we're gonna do that.
Yeah, it's like it looks cool. Sephiroth has this fucking 12-foot washing pole thing. But it's anime, but there's just something about it that I just never cared for. And I don't know if it's the aesthetics, because it just seems like this. Again, I think I was talking about this almost in one of our earlier episodes, where there's like this weird clash of like styles. One second I'm in super like hyper industrialized city, next minute I'm in honky donk fucking cowboy town, and I'm like, I don't understand what the technology level, like what the style's supposed to be here,
Yeah,
and that's what you got.
Think a lot of.
Yeah, you got that Final Fantasy VII. Remember that? So I was talking about where you can make like materials and transform into shit. That's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You can now take these items and stuff and make yourself a potion and shit, like in this little looking like cell phone thing. So yeah, they got a mixture of technology from all over the place,
which isn't a bad thing by itself, but it just seems like so like. I look at that cowboy town and I'm like, they have like this old fucking rusty water tower, and I just saw this cutscene where like they have like flying cars. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's no crossover. It's so weird. Whereas like a weird comparison is like Cyberpunk, right? Everywhere I can see traces of like how the technology integration has touched like every facet of life, right? Everyone has tech on them. I feel like it's a weird thing, but I'm just trying to compare styles. Like Cyberpunk seems like a fully realized condensed. Of course, I don't know how the other Final Fantasies are. I'm just picking on 7 because it's the first thing that comes to mind. But because in Crystal Chronicles didn't have that problem. When I played Crystal Chronicles, it was just fantasy all the way through. No one had guns or anything.
Somebody riding bitch and holding the crystal.
Yeah, who wants to carry this?
Crew.
Yeah, I still understand when it's like it'd be really fun. It's like, yeah, it's like, all right, the players can only be in this really small circle, and then if they want to move, some of them has to carry the stupid thing and then throw it down, then fight, then pick it up, then throw it down. You just do that 100 million times throughout the entire game. It's like, oh wow, that sounds horrible. It's like, let's do it.
Let's make a game.
I would almost much rather have some sort of creature carrying it, following you guys. And then
if you play single player, which isn't how you should play the game. When you play single player, you have a little Moogle buddy that'll carry it for you, which you should have just had the entire fucking time, even with multiplayer.
And he's like, oh, you got friends? I'm out.
He's got the phone app. Yeah. Making phone calls.
I mean, like Final Fantasy 2, like they do have a lot of like identity. Well, a lot of them have like a strong identity. It's just 7's is so weird, and I think it's because they had a lot of ideas since they were going to 3D for the first time. Because like Final Fantasy 6 is very solid, like world building. Final Fantasy 8 is very solid world building. It's the theme of that one. I'm not saying it's a good game. I don't like that one as much, but like the world that you're in is very cohesive. And then you go to space. They do that a lot for some reason. Final Fantasy IV is the same thing. You're like, oh, kingdoms and all this stuff and dragons, and then we need to get a spaceship and go to the moon. The Final Fantasy IX actually is a very nice fantasy game. That one is my favorite of the three on PlayStation.
But
One,
here's a question, actually. So I actually don't know this. So we have like 100 million Final Fantasies at this point. Are they congruent? Like, they see
not
like to play one. Do I have to play a different one? Do I ever, or can I just jump in at any point in the timeline? Like, does it matter, or is everything
you
like
can
its own
play them.
self-contained thing?
You can
You
jump in
can play them in
anyone.
any
Yeah,
order, except for 13. 13 is the only one that
13,
has like,
13, 2,
well,
whatever.
so 13 has three games to it, but
At
if
the
you
one with
wanted to just
lightning.
play 13-3,
That,
Lightning Returns,
yeah.
you could just play that one. It's a totally different kind of game because you just play as Lightning, and then there's cameos of characters from like the first 13. But when you play Final Fantasy X, there's a sequel to that one, but I don't really care too much
Don't
about the
recommend it.
sequel to that one. It's it's just kind of like, what if we added on more to the story? And it's like, I
Just
don't need that.
yeah, and it's
I
nothing
was
against the like, but it's like you play as Yuna
Well,
and two
it's
other
playing like a
girls.
different
You,
perspective. Yeah, it's Riku and Yuna, and
Riku,
then
yeah,
it
Riku.
adds a character named Pain. And she's not in the original. And then it's more of like kind of has like a Sailor Moon approach where you have outfits that change, and they bring that back with like Final Fantasy 13-3, where Lightning's outfits kind of dictate her playstyle, which is kind of cool, I guess. But
She was the
again,
one that
those are the
became like a
outliers.
fucking like
Fashion
IRL
model,
fashion model. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they're using her character model to like advertise clothes and stuff. But technically, all of the other Final Fantasies, like if you wanted to play 9 and then 2 and then 5, like the only thing that they share in common is like the creature design and magic spells. So
Summons.
like the lore of like the gods kind of like
When did they
transcend
make like
games.
the train? Because I know the original seven, at least not counting the remake, was everything up to seven and maybe even after it like that was all turn-based combat, right? When
Yes.
did they make the transition to like action-based stuff?
Well, Final Fantasy 12, I think, it had more of the online style like combat. It felt more like you were playing an MMO with your party running around and you were fighting in the area that you were walking. But something with Final Fantasy is they always try to like reinvent the wheel on their combat system. So that's like the big thing for like, oh, what's this game's fighting style going to be like? Because they were always notorious for like they had the best graphics when they would come out because they spent so much money on that,
You
and their
say that, and
combat
my mind
system.
just goes to fucking seven with fucking big old boxy
Well, yeah, I
arms
mean,
and
at the
shit.
time, of course, it was
10
like
was crazy
it was
good
the first
graphics.
13 or the first 3D game. So I like to think that for a lot of games that do the jump from 2D to 3D for the first time, and those or like the first one on a new console, when people are like, wow, this one's so revolutionary. It's like, yeah, because it had to be. Why would they make the same game from the last console? Because like Final Fantasy X, which is my favorite on the PS2, it had a really awesome battle system. And then they just throw it out the window, and Final Fantasy 11 is an MMO, so they just jumped into 12, and that combat system is more like the MMO game. And I'm like, I
And
don't
I
really like this so much.
and I
And then
liked the
13
level
goes
up.
back, but 13 increases this, or they changed the combat system to like synergy and ravager and all this other shit, and there's like they just make it, oh, you have to hit the enemy with magic spells first to build this gauge so that you could break its armor, so now you can damage its health. And it's just like it's like, why don't you just keep it to 10? Just keep Final Fantasy X's combat system. It was fucking perfect. I mean, Lord of the Rings even released a game on GameCube that's an RPG, and they're using Final Fantasy X's battle system, which is wild to play a Lord of the Rings game that's like that. But it's
Yeah.
fun because it worked.
Now,
Um,
was they ever? Did they make a switch? Because I know I did touch. What was it? I know that subtitles the Zodiac Age. Which one? Which Final Fantasy
oh,
is that?
Final Fantasy 12.
So that one had like a Xenoblade combat system where it was technically an action-based system, but it was like a
Yeah.
charging meter essentially. Did they ever have it kind of like how Legend of Dragoon does it, where it's like it's a turn-based system, but then there's, or even Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, like there's a turn-based system, but like in doing your turn, you have to press buttons in order to do like more damage and stuff.
I don't think Final Fantasy has ever done that.
No, I don't think they did. No.
Primarily because like their combat system has to be unique compared to everybody else. So since Legend of Dragoon came out and did that, they're like, well, we're not going to do that. You know.
Well, maybe not.
Arguably,
number
you know,
6. I mean, number 6 for those characters.
Well,
you had to
the
do
one character.
Yeah, one per character, but you had to do an actual specific type of movement. Yeah, to do a move.
Yeah, he was one of the twins, the Prince twins or whatever, and he had like a Kamehameha input, the notorious suplexing a train.
Yes, like, my favorite.
But like you would have a button input that was damn near impossible to, because it didn't tell you what buttons you were even pressing. You pressed blitz and you had like an undisclosed amount of time to press a button combination, and it doesn't tell you or give you any feedback that you have even pressed the button, so there's no click or beep or anything. So you're like, I think I did it, and then he runs forward, is like, missed. You're like, damn it.
Here's a weird question that I don't understand. Me like everyone else had seen the the like revamped beach scene in the new remake of Final Fantasy where Tifa and Aerith both come out, and the only thing that the weirdest thing what I remember from that like scene that I saw on YouTube, the only thing I thought to myself is like, the cat talks. What is the cat? I didn't know the cat talked.
Kate Sith, the weird like Scottish cat. Is it that one?
Yeah, it's the little red guy, because Teep was like, "Do we look good?" And he's like, "You look like he's like, you look like a blah blah blah." And she's like, "Thanks for the compliment." He's like, "I don't understand humans."
Oh, the Red 13. Yeah, he's like a lab grown creature, so like he has sentience, but it's strange because there's like he's from like Cosmo Canyon or something like that, and but yeah,
so
he's
it's not like a person in like a creature's body. He's just an intelligent cat.
Yeah, he's an experiment of Hojo, the creepy scientist guy of the game. But Final Fantasy does that, like in Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, I thought you were more confused of the actual cat that's Scottish and he's riding on a giant stuffed animal. And
what's it about?
Okay, stop. I watch anime. I don't care if someone has a random Scottish accent. What the fuck ever. I'm just curious. I didn't know it talked. I just always seen that creature around when I've seen Final Fantasy VII, but I've never seen.
Yeah, I'm not judgmental.
Yeah, well, in Final Fantasy,
there's some things I'm willing to let fly. I don't have a problem with the fact that he talks. I just didn't know he talked.
Yeah, in Final Fantasy 3 or 6, depending. I guess I'll use 6 in this sense, but you get a Yeti on your team. Just a Yeti. Like,
you say that, and the only thing I thought of was like Monsters Inc. is like, I'm the abominable snow monster.
Yeah, basically.
Don't drink. It's okay. They're lemon.
So it's kind of fun, but yeah, yeah, he talks.
Yeah, no, I know. I told you it was a weird question. I just, like I said, I've seen that character both in old and the new fucking Final Fantasy, and I'm just like, this is the first time I realized that he had a voice, and I was just like, I just wanted to know what the story was behind that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
like fucking Jujutsu Kaisen, who throws a fucking talking panda in my face and doesn't fucking explain it till like 6 episodes after the fact.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very JRPG of them to have like the talking animal character.
Oh, here we go. Great segue, because now I'm going to bring up something. We talked about it. We were talking about what we were going to talk about in this episode. Talk.
Chatting.
Yeah.
Converse.
My thesaurus needs updating. So, but we've got into the fact, like, what really makes a JRPG, because what sparked this conversation, circling back to when I was bitching about Dragon's Dogma, when I opened up the game, I didn't realize that Capcom had made that game. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what designates a JRPG, like, truly? Because we've gotten to a lot of genre talk on this show so far, just to cover like broad things and get everyone's perspective on stuff when it comes to certain genres. And me personally, I think labeling game genres is unhelpful in a sense because of how broad gaming is now and how like unhelpful it is to label things certain ways. But because especially when it comes to JRPG as opposed to a regular RPG. So I look at Dragon's Dogma and I'm like, it was made by Capcom. Capcom's a Japanese company. Does that make Dragon's
Heretofore.
Dogma? Yeah, theretofore, does that make Dragon's Dogma a JRPG? In a technical sense, like if you're just trying to be, real like an ass about it, yes.
That's a
But
technicality, Colin.
it's a technicality. But and then I, just out of random curiosity, I Googled the definition of JRPG because we all know Google is never wrong. So
Yeah.
we'll take everything it says as pure fact. Wiki Dictionary defines JRPG as a traditional genre of role playing video game generally understood as involving a predetermined story and player characters, a party of multiple controllable characters, and an emphasis on narrative and storytelling.
I
That
feel
does
like that's
not help.
vague still.
It's
Even though
still
it's like
vague, right?
specific.
Yeah, it's still vague. The only part that I thought about was that literally the last sentence. It's like an emphasis on narrative and storytelling, because that's what I always felt JRPGs did really well, and it especially had a large focus on, because that's half the reason why JRPGs are like twice, three times, four times the length of traditional RPGs because of all the dialogue, all the talking, all the story.
I'm sure that you can go into it on Persona because I know that game has.
Oh yeah,
Some would call it game padding, but Persona, for some reason, it doesn't feel like padding. It's like very important to the story to do all of those things.
yeah, and a lot of that stuff actually is technically optional, but you go after it because you want that content. And so based on that definition, I mean, I know I heard everyone's groans just now saying how it was too vague, but do you agree with it to a certain extent? Like, how would you all define what a JRPG is to you?
So I know that this has been kind of like a weird, I don't want to say controversial topic because I've said it a few times already today, but
Everything's
some people were trying to say, like, they're like, oh, that's, insert racism here because they're saying you're labeling it Japanese because it's Japanese. But I don't even know when like the transition from RPG to JRPG happened, because when I was a kid, on the cases, if it was an RPG, it would say RPG. And if it was a tactical RPG, it would say RPG Sim on the game. We didn't really call them JRPGs until like more Western games started coming out. But to me, it was like what made a JRPG was it was a turn-based combat system that had like anime influences in like the character designs and stuff. So that, I guess, is what I would look at a JRPG as. I mean, I've played a lot of them, and that kind of falls into the category of like most of the games I've played that are that way. It didn't necessarily have to be a Japanese game developer to be a JRPG, because people just started using it as like the combat system. But then, people started to change that to label it as just turn-based RPGs versus action RPGs, and they're just kind of going back to bundling everything into the same category.
Yeah, because you think about it, it's like well, it's turn-based RPG. It's like, well, I can think of several, and this is exactly the reason why I don't even trust genre talk very much, because it's just like there's always like you say something about a certain genre, and then somebody in the room is going to have like three exceptions in mind immediately that would technically fall under that genre but don't follow the rules exactly. So it's interesting to talk about how there is because like even newer games, even indie games that aren't made in Japan but are inspired by JRPGs like Final Fantasy will be labeled as like a JRPG, instead of just an RPG. It's
like
just
Sea of Stars.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredibly interesting to me how that there is a difference, but the difference is like vague. And again, it's just like emphasis on, because when I was trying to define it, I was like, I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I thought about like Skyrim and stuff like Elder Scrolls, right? I was like, so the difference is that it's emphasis on the player character, player quote unquote choice. Skyrim doesn't really give you a lot of choice. Not a whole lot of games do. It's usually a bunch of lies. But it's like it's about the character and like the freedom to just do stuff. But then I'm just like at the same time, I just think about Mass Effect. Emphasis on narrative and storytelling, right? Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Predetermined characters, Mass Effect. And it's like the only thing that Mass Effect breaks that mold is like or predetermined characters. Predetermined story breaks the mold because Mass Effect does have choices. You can slightly influence the story to the point where you'll get different endings. So, but other than that, it almost meets that definition word for word, you know,
Yeah.
besides that one thing.
I think another thing that would kind of dictate JRPG is that, like, most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, the main hero is like 14. You know, they're usually pretty young, and it's like a
16
coming of
tops.
age
That's it.
story. It's kind of hard to find it's like characters that are like, you know, because like the trope in anime and stuff like that too is, you know, the character's like 27, they're like, you're an old man, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
what, you know, because
I know
I
it's
mean, I
like
guess the
when you
character when he's
watch
12, yeah.
it's when you watch fucking JoJo Stardust Crusaders and fucking JoJo's supposed to be in high school and he looks like a fucking tank.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
like Ichigo and Chad, you know, in
Yeah.
Bleach. It's like, yo, that guy's like 7 feet tall, like 900 pounds, just
Or
muscle.
Baki, where
And
they're
he's
all
yeah,
just
Blocky when he's like
rough.
he's 14. I'm like, God,
I need to work out.
yeah, I'll never catch up to this. He's been working out since he was born.
But even then, it's like, does that count? Because I'm sure if I looked for more than 10 seconds, I could probably find a JRPG that breaks that rule, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's like, so why is there even a definition of JRPG? You know, and it's like,
I'm assuming it's just where it originates from, because to me, the way I see it, like my very first JRPGs were literally Paper Mario on N64 and Pokemon Fire Red. But the way that I always saw it is it's more like that's a very vague definition, because that's like almost any RPG. But for me,
well,
a
kind of, sort of, but
JRPG,
like Elder Scrolls breaks a lot of the rules that I just said about that. Like, besides having a predetermined story, but it's like not about characters. It's about like it's about you. It's not about like
it's
learning new
a
characters, stories and stuff. You know.
linear story path that the player is just kind of going through.
Yeah, I guess
well,
that would be
no,
well,
like
yeah.
I played Skyrim and Resident Evil like a hell of a ton, but I never considered either of them JRPGs, simply because the way that I saw it always is because anime is like now its own art style. Like everyone's pretty, everyone just looks nicer. They're all like nicely animated. Like obviously, Final Fantasy is a JRPG because it runs on like uh, that look of an anime. So like
It's like,
I wouldn't count like realism, like Western games like Halo and all that. I wouldn't count those obviously as JRPGs. Like Resident Evil also looks a similar way, but it is made by Capcom. But I don't count it as JRPG regardless, because it doesn't have that look to it either.
well, I mean, it goes from looks. I mean, I would agree that I wouldn't label Resident Evil as a JRPG. Resident Evil's survival horror third person shooter, but it's like, and that's another funny thing to think about. Technically, if we're using technicalities here, Pokemon is a JRPG, even though it fits under the genre of creature collector, because that's another problem. We have these broad genres divided into subgenres, divided those into
Yeah,
subgenres, and
yeah, because you know we're specifically talking about turn-based RPGs, and like when you talk about JRPGs, that could go from like action RPG, tactical RPG, turn-based RPG. You know, that list is very broad.
I mean, almost everything like originated mostly from turn-based, because it was just easier to make rather than just like real-time movement and stuff like that. Regardless of like the first Zelda, but I haven't really seen a lot of old games that play like that. But there's like mainly Zelda and Mario, but they were made by the exact same company. But it's like turn-based is just like easier to make in the past rather than just like real time, like something like Skyrim or Resident Evil,
Well, would it
things like
though?
that.
Because like, fuck. I mean, I remember when I was at Corey's house last time I was there, and he showed me a Berserk game on the fucking, what was it, the
Dreamcast.
Saturn or the Dreamcast? That's what it was. And
Yeah,
now it's old as shit. And I was like shocked at its like technical fidelity. Like I was like, holy crap, this game's old as fuck, but it like runs really well. There's like character movement and stuff. It was like almost like Dynasty Warriors esque like action combat sort of. Like
yeah.
I was like super impressed by it.
Was it
And what
Guts Rage or something like that? I think is the subtitle.
Yeah, something like that. And and what you were just saying, Edwin, about like the art style too, because it's like, oh, everything looks pretty, but then my mind immediately was just like Kingsfield, Dark Souls, everything's ugly as sin. But even then, it's like, wait, do we classify Dark Souls and Kingsfield as JRPGs? But no, that's also pivoting into another subgenre of fucking Souls-like because those games just created their own genre. Like,
Yeah.
No,
But-
Which
that's what
technically
it should
too,
look.
the Souls-like games are just Zelda games or 3D Metroidvanias.
Mhm.
If you think about it with the backtracking and everything else, it's exactly what a Metroidvania does, but in 3D space.
No,
What were you
that's
saying,
why.
Edwin?
No, well, that's why I said it was like basically on the look. Like you can obviously tell, like a Western show compared to an Eastern show, animated show, because it's just two completely different looking things that you can pretty much do the same thing with video games. Because like the games that I've played, I was like Pokemon Valkyrie Profile, Dragon Quest, like all those count as anime. But then like the ones that don't look like it, you wouldn't count as a JRPG. There's like Dark Souls, Skyrim, and like Halo and things like that, because it just doesn't have that look. Because obviously you can like be influenced by a bunch of other things, or you can just make your own idea. But it really just depends on the person and the way they see it.
Yeah, I mean, I was using Skyrim as like an example of like what is not a JRPG. It's like Skyrim, like the Elder Scrolls to me is like the antithesis of what most people think a JRPG is.
Yeah, but like what is like a JRPG is like a Japanese role playing game. It was like what's Japan most known for? It was like it's anime. It was like so I just like connected the two dots. I was like, all right, that's it.
I mean, kind of, sort of. Like I said, if I bet you anything that if I took the time to just like get through a list of like old school retro JRPGs, I could find one that was ugly as fuck that doesn't look anything like anime.
I mean, I'm basing it more on modern now, where it's like in Western games, it's pretty much illegal to make a girl pretty.
It's just, well, that's all. That's modern day and Western games. That's a whole different topic. But I'm right there with you. It's fucking stupid. But can't wait for Stellar Blade, by the way.
Pre-ordered it.
I think probably like tell me if you agree with this. Probably one thing when people think of JRPGs, the thing that a lot of people think of first is it is long. Like you are going to get a lot of gameplay time out of this. Like it is going to take you a long time to get through.
I mean, some
Would you
of
agree with
them,
that?
I would agree. I mean, in like classifying long, I suppose like gameplay wise, mid 30s.
Well, I'm not
To
even
get
more
through
than
the
that.
main campaign,
Because
but
what
like
God of
Dragon
War,
Quest was, I think I spent 140 hours.
but that's how much you would spend, right? Because like I think
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok. Granted, that's a more modern title, but like I did nearly everything in that game, and once by the time I beat it, I think I was clocking in at like 20 between 25 and 30 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go back and look at Persona 5 Royal, right, the definitive edition, because I played Persona 5 and then I played Royal when it came out.
200 easy.
So yeah, so here's the thing though. I clocked in at about 150 hours. This is a person, me, who already knows the game, knew what most of the bosses were, knows how it goes, and for more or less was using completely overpowered mechanics to just breeze my way through the combat because I just wanted to get to the new shit that they added.
Mm-hmm.
Still clocked in at that much time, even though I breezed through what most people would take much longer to do.
I think
Like,
the length of those games are what like the reason why I was drawn to it. Like as a kid, obviously I don't have a job, but I would get like a Christmas present, a birthday present or something, and a lot of the times it would be, a JRPG because it would take a long time to beat it. Like if you just got like a simple like regular video game, like the kid might get bored with it, but you'd have like an RPG that you were like, "Oh man, Summer Break is going to be awesome because I'm going to play the hell out of this game." And it would take you like a month, or two to like really absorb like an entire game. So it was kind of cool because that was their draw to me was like, this is, if I'm only going to get one game, I really want that game to last a while. I mean, not every game can be replayable like Mega Man X. Obviously, you can run that game over and over and over again, but like JRPGs aren't necessarily designed to be played over and over again. So they have this like long story experience because it's the hero's journey every single time, basically. But like I really resonated with those games too, because of it. Like the stories were very much inspired through like Shinto beliefs and things like that, where it's like you're gonna kill God by the end of this. Just saying. Like any JRPG that you play typically ends that way.
Well, that's a meme, right? It's just like
Yeah.
JRPG level 1, save grandma's cat. It's just like level 100, kill God. It's like, how did we get here?
Yeah. But in a lot of those games, the characters are younger. So I'm 12, and I'm playing a game where the main character is like the same age range as me, and it's this like fun adventure that I wish I could go on. And a game that really stands out to me in that context is Grandia, which is definitely one of my favorite RPGs. And it follows this kid named Justin, and the whole thing is like you reach the edge of the world and you find out that there's more, and it's like, oh shit, and it's just this really whimsical game. The characters are really fun, and it has this like awesome story beat mechanics where you eat dinner like at a camp or something with like the party, and they kind of reflect on what you've done so far. And
I
it
just
really
stopped when you said just like eating dinner. It's like, wow.
Yeah,
Hell
he's
yeah.
got to eat dinner. Yeah, I wish I had dinner.
Fuck yeah.
No, but like while they're eating, like they're telling stories of like the journey you have done so far. So like it really keeps you in the story. Like Grandia in itself, like the music is really good. I go back to listen to it every once in a while when I'm like drawing or modeling or something. And it really captures the sense of adventure, like nails it. The second one is a little more mature, and the Grandia 3 is kind of divided, but that one's fun. It's still wondrous. But the first game is definitely like the best one in that franchise.
I guess you just went on a lot about the story, and I would largely agree with you. In fact, do you have that in like a physical edition at your house?
Yes, yeah,
Keep that in
I have
mind.
on
Put that
PlayStation 1.
so put that to the side. I want to check that out next time I'm over there.
Yeah.
But I guess here's another thing. Would you like whether or not people would agree with when it comes to trying to define exactly what a JRPG is? We'll figure it out the mystery before this podcast is over. We'll do the world a favor. But so we said that they're long, right? And that's already fucking broad. It's just like, what does long mean? It's like you're gonna get 100+ hours of experience for, even if you're trying to speed run the game without glitching the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
But it's like you are, and going off the back of what you're just saying about the story, it's like when people say JRPG is a thing that pops into your mind immediately. It's just like, yes, it's going to have a story, and I know it sounds stupid, right? Every fucking game is a story, but it's like a long grandiose story, like an epic adventure, right? Whereas like when people say regular RPGs, again, I keep going back to Elder Scrolls because I feel like Elder Scrolls is a prime example of like what people think of when they're thinking of like a Western RPG. Where it's very largely not about like a grandiose story, but rather the experiences you're making for yourself in the game, essentially, because everyone's Skyrim experience is different.
Yeah.
To where you're not going along, you're not taking down Sephiroth, right? I mean, technically there's Alduin, but who gives a fuck, because the game just lets you go immediately once you're out of Helgen. But in JRPGs, it's like you have a goal, and the point is to get to that goal, not to fuck around and do a bunch of other shit. The only like side stuff is probably either gonna be mini games or the fact that I guess that's another thing, right? So like, I guess I'm getting all over the place now. So would you agree with that? It's like that when you think of JRPGs, that you're in for like a big story, like a big narrative experience.
Yeah, and from my experience on every single one of them, they have this like mid game story change where it's like you're playing this game and it might be like a smaller problem that you're trying to solve, like, oh, this bandit guy is like kidnapping all the kids in the village, we have to stop him. And like, you play the game for like 10 hours and finally you get to the big bad guy who's kidnapping all these kids, and then you find out he's actually a pawn in a much grander like plot. And then that's why you always end up like, oh, now we have to fight God, because like you start off on this like little adventure that turns out to be like much more than you were expecting, like every time, because whether you're stumbling across like an accidental military installation where you heard something you weren't supposed to, or the character that's your friend has been like this ancient goddess the entire time, and now you have to protect them, and your character probably has fallen in love with them because of the amount of time you spent together on the journey so far. Or insert I have this special item or my birthright I didn't know about until just now, and uh, so they always have like a simple story at first, and then it just turns into this giant whole ordeal. I mean, Dragon Quest 11 literally has like the entire half of the game after the credits. If you picked it up and continued to play, I thought I beat it and was like looking at videos and saw bosses I had never seen before. I was like, what the hell is this? And then it's like, oh my god, there's like still 40 something hours left of this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I also had to do something, with self growth, like the person themselves finding out who they really are and developing themselves throughout their entire period of the game to eventually being the utmost best of who they can possibly be. But it's just through all that anime-ish type of feeling, I guess, in a sense.
Power of
Well,
friendship.
it always says like a message, right? Like do better, be better, learn from your mistakes, something along that. It's usually not overly pretentious usually, but it's kind of like how anime does it. It's like there's usually some kind of message to be had about the like a
Power of
theme of the
friendship.
story.
Yeah, power of
Yeah.
friendship.
Yeah, power of friendship. No, that's more anime. That's just more
Ah!
straight.
Yep. Well, it's like in my experiences, like the longer games definitely are JRPGs, but it's JRPGs are more like a one-time experience unless you have that much time to play it all over again. Because I definitely could not go back to playing Dragon Quest 11 because I put in like 140 hours in that game. But it's
Yeah.
just like maxing everything out and finding like all the extra stuff. But compared to like Dragon Quest and like Dark Souls, I'd say that they're like really different games because Dark Souls takes a lot longer to beat, even though it's pretty straightforward and doesn't have as much lore unless you go looking for it or you like stop and read the descriptions of every single item. The game's longevity is mainly on how good you are to not die multiple times on a boss or to like not step out of your way to find extra things to do. And for for Pokemon, it's just like you can play the whole thing over and over again using like different teams, but then there's also like not deleting your save, the one save that you have, just to go and shiny hunt for a million hours. But also it's like games like Valkyrie Profile is like one of my favorite games. That game is like heavily story driven, where it's like long stories one after another, and then a little bit of gameplay sprinkled in between each of them. And like the further you get into the game, it's just more action and less story because it's mainly like a time crunch. Like you have a time limit to the end of the story where everything concludes, and it depends on everything you've done in that amount of time. But it's just like a Norse mythology where you go and find people on Earth or Midgar, and then you just recruit them, and then you train them to send them up to Valhalla to fight the war for you while you still and continue looking for more people. And then by the end of it, you unlock the story of the main character, Lenneth Valkyrie. And then some like the characters that you find on Earth like help you find your true self and all that. And then by the end of it, depending on how well you've played out the story and the things that you've done, the bosses you've beaten, you get the which ending. You either betray, you save, or you find a true ending, and then everything is gone to shit regardless. But then you try and fix everything because you found out what your true mission in your entire life was for that moment. I was trying to say all that without actually spoiling it, but it's a weird game, but I still love it. It still looks really nice. It has great stories, great characters. But it's a really weird game considering that you can't get the true ending unless you beat on the hardest difficulty. So it's like you're gonna lose a few times, which will go into longevity of the game. But definitely the longevity of it is just how much story is in it.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that I think that JRPGs have done pretty well, like over the course of like time, outside of recently, is I don't recall a lot of them having difficulty settings. I think the game was just play.
At least the
Because-
old ones, yeah, because new ones more than likely do most
I
of the
mean,
time.
there's hard enemies, of course, but because of the game is about growing stronger, like you could always overcome things. Like things are only as difficult as you allow it to be. So
Yeah.
like the progression of the player is based solely on how much you're willing to put in to become like strong as hell.
Hmm. I think one last comparison before we can like go into a little bit about individual games. Um, like a negative connotation I think people get a lot when you mention JRPGs, and we can see whether everyone agrees to this or not. But you say JRPG, and people immediately associate it with like, oh Christ, I'm gonna have to sit there and grind at some point. I have to sit there and kill the wild mobs for a couple hours in order to keep my levels up or to grind out equipment or something. Would you feel like that's warranted as a negative connotation that the term JRPG comes with typically?
I mean, I guess I don't necessarily agree because that's not how I approach it. But I play JRPGs like a crazy person. Uh, and like, I mean, it's in the same way that I play the Dark Souls games. It's like I level up just enough because it's a numbers game. So like, I have just enough strength to beat a boss. Like, if a boss beats me, I don't go grind for hours to come back and like push his shit in. I will level up once and try it again, and be like, okay, that didn't work. I'll get one more level and then try it again. And it's like, oh, I beat him, and then I'll keep going. Like it's not a struggle bus. It's just like I'm solving this math problem exactly, and that's kind of how I feel. Because like,
that logic really sucks in Demon Souls, where it's like that one boss steals a level from you if you get hit by attack.
oh yeah, Alent or whatever, King Alent, when he grabs you, and it's like perma zap. You're like, son of a bitch.
I gotta grind 2 levels instead of 1.
Yeah, but like it's more of like players will think, oh, I have to grind to get to level like 70, but it's like that's your choice. If you don't want to try the battle again because you think you need to be 20 levels higher to beat him, um, but the downside of my approach to this is also sometimes I'll get beat by a boss so bad that I'm like, oh, this must be one of those I had to lose it fights, and then it just goes to a game over screen. I'm like, nope.
You do Disgaea and you break the game and you beat the boss,
Yeah.
beat the first boss and you weren't supposed to.
Yeah, Jordan was playing some Disgaea and didn't realize because you kept resetting the game after the boss would kill you that you're supposed to lose that fight, so that you kept leveling up in like the first chapter, which must have taken forever since they don't give you that much experience.
Forever.
And then you're like, there, I finally killed that guy. He's so damn hard. And it's like, he was supposed to be. You're fighting a demon god, and you're like you just started the game. Like, of course he's going to be difficult, but you're like, no, I'm going to become the demon god. Which I guess makes sense for Laharl, right? Because he is.
Yeah, the game must have been fun if you went
king.
through all that.
Dude,
Well,
that game was
Disgaea
fun.
yeah, and I mean, if we want to talk about tactical RPGs at some point, like that definitely is a very fun game that me and my entire friend group had poured hours into that game.
I was like, well,
Hours.
grinding in a video game is more about patience, because I don't think a lot of people have the same patience as that one person who grind to level 99 in original Kingdom Hearts and Destiny Island, where the only enemy gives you 1 experience.
See, yeah, that's madness. And grinding to me too is like a mindset. Like it feels like if it feels like a task, then it's grinding. But if I'm leveling up and I'm having fun, like I'm not grinding, because the phrase grinding is just negative. Like that has the negative connotation to me. But I beat Final Fantasy VII, the original one, and I was like level 48. And, like that's kind of how I play all of my RPGs. Is just like, can I squeak by? Yes. But it's a challenge that way,
It's like I say it because that's like what pushes people away from JRPGs, or why some people don't like it, because they would associate a JRPG having a grind set. Because I could say that, well, my time in Persona, I haven't felt like I needed to grind very much. The only time I did grind is when I like accidentally kind of cracked the code to the game and was able to like grind experience really hardcore for like little to no effort. But when I played Xenoblade, I definitely had reached the point where I just had to like sit down and grind, which kind of irritated me a lot because I wanted to keep going with the story. And it's not even like I was shying away from fights, but at some point before I could hit the last boss, I had to sit there and like grind for like a couple days before I was ready to like fight the final boss, and I found that fairly irritating.
Yeah.
So that Xenoblade game, what is that about, really? I have no. I was gonna play it, and I just never got to it.
Which
Bro,
one?
don't fucking ask me. Don't. So,
Giant robots sometimes.
so my history with Xenoblade, I played the two that, or I didn't play the two that everybody likes. I haven't played Xenoblade 1, and I haven't played Xenoblade 3. When they announced Xenoblade 2, I saw Pyra, and I was like, oh, okay, bet. I was like, I went out and got the special edition of the game that day, or when I had the chance to, and I played that one, and I never touched the other ones because they didn't have Pyra Mithra in them.
Yeah. The Xenoblade games they're kind of fun. Like I like how massive the world is, which kudos to Monolith Soft, I believe is the people that make that
Yeah.
game. Like they made a giant game run on the Switch pretty well, and we
Yeah.
all know that seems to be fucking impossible for some people. But
Mhm.
for a company that's not Nintendo to make a game on Nintendo exclusively and it run fine on their system, though there's probably some instances of like frame rate drops, but like
Oh, yeah.
it's a monster of a game on that console, and it's pretty cool.
Well, what I can tell you, at least from what I know, again, I don't know I know that there's some continuity between the titles. I don't know if Xenoblade 2 is a sequel or a prequel to the first one with Shulk, and the only reason I know his name is because he was in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Um,
And the Monado.
all I know is that Xenoblade is like, at least in 2, you play as Rex. The world is basically human civilization lives on top of these giant passive monsters that are either taller than the clouds or fly above the clouds, and people make their lives up there with humans and the the little furball creatures. There's a couple creatures actually because you have a cat girl in your
Cat
party
Girl,
too.
the weird guy with the ear arms.
Yeah, Tora is his name, but I'm forgetting the name of his race. But anyways, and basically in this world, Rex, he's like a salvager. He salvage things in like the Cloud Sea, as they call it, and you basically get to the point where you get wrong place, wrong time. You get killed. Pyra finds you. She splits her power with you to save her life, and now you guys are like intrinsically linked. And she's like a super weapon that needs to get somewhere, and you're gonna help her do it because she saved your life. Along the way, you meet friends and stuff that help you get
right
there.
time storyline.
Yeah, and then so be it. You go through the story and help her get there, and you meet friends and faces along the way, and then kill a couple gods, no big deal. And then basically at the end of the game, you basically learn the meaning of life, and then happily ever after. No spoilerinas, but anyways, I will say that at the end of the game, I probably cried for a solid hour. But
Damn.
I really like that game, all right? I really like the characters a lot. Yeah. I was sad, and then everything got happy again, then I was happy. But Xenoblade's combat system is what I was comparing it to earlier, because I compared Zodiac Age to it. It's an action RPG thing where it's like you auto attack. There's no button to like standard attack. You just automatically attack when you're locked onto something, and then you have special abilities you use, which then you can time to do extra damage, and you can swap out between Pyra and all. And so I guess another thing is Pyra isn't a human. There's these things called blades in the world, which are like humanoid constructs that all represent a weapon that you use. So you kind of use you like fight together with the blade and the weapon they have. So Rex has like this sword that Pyra and Mithra have, but you can also get other blades throughout the game, and you can switch between them and stuff. And there's like elemental weaknesses and all these other status effects. It gets really confusing at a certain point, as some JRPGs tend to be, and I know that Xenoblade 2 is probably the most contentious of the three Xenoblades, not counting X because it was kind of a spinoff. But I like it. I mean, it was a simple fact of just like, I'm sorry, but sex sells. I saw Pyra and Mithra, and I was just like, bet, and I never had any interest in playing the first or the third game.
Yeah.
But again, I finished that game. I clocked in easily. Probably I was brushing at 200 hours, I think.
Yeah, that's due to like not really game padding, but like just the
And I
world
didn't do a
size.
lot of the side quest either.
You know, you're traveling around mass areas, and
Yeah.
but it's fun to like travel around those because there's like no fall damage.
Mm-hmm.
So
Is that my Discord?
no,
No, I think
Edwin was
Edwin.
letting us know.
What you heard? Somebody make a voice.
I heard Discord go bloop, and I didn't know if it was me or somebody else.
Yeah, no, because he's got to head out here shortly.
Well, if you have to head out here shortly, Edwin, did you want to talk? Did you want to put any more? Get whatever thoughts you have on JRPGs, or talk about a specific one that? Well, you already talked about your Valkyria Chronicles, right? Is there anything else you wanted to say about JRPGs in general while you still have time?
I mean, to me, JRPGs are like obviously what I said before is like the look of anime, I guess, but because they have like so much more story than in Western, it's more of like an interactive storybook rather than just like for the purposes of entertainment. Because obviously, you wouldn't look at Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man video games, and think, oh, this is a storybook thing. It's like, oh, it's fantasy and like knights and dragons and all that. It's like you wouldn't really get that kind of experience from that. So video games are like pretty much like interactive movies, but like for JRPGs, it's more of a interactive storybook. Like you're there for the story and the action, rather than like going to like a movie theater and just watching.
I mean, I would agree with you to a certain extent, because how I would describe a movie game is probably closer to what I would think of when I think of something like Uncharted or any of those horrible fucking choice like Heavy Rain and shit like that I fucking hate. Those are closer to what I describe as like movie games. And then when you talk about interactive books, I mean, literally the first thing that pops in my mind is fucking visual novels, because that's literally what they are. I think JRPGs are a happy medium between both of those, where you have enough gameplay where it's a game, but enough story that it can be appreciated on its own as a story. Lots of world building and stuff like that.
I think you're like on the nose a little bit too, when you're talking about like how Spider-Man's approach versus like an RPG, because it is kind of like an interactive. Like you play Spider-Man because you want to like play the game. Like you don't really give a shit about the story as much. But when you're picking like an RPG, like what was the recent game that came out, Unicorn Overlord. Like people are picking that game because it has an intricate storyline. The gameplay side is like a bonus, but when you're picking, like if the story is bad in a JRPG, it is fucking hard to play. Like you're just doing it now, and I've done that with a few games like Crystar or whatever, Dragonstar Veneer. I think I was just like, God, this is stupid, but I was just getting through it. I did the same thing with Arc Rise Fantasia, where it's notoriously bad voice acting. And so, like, it has a story, but it's delivered poorly. So you're like, God, I wish these characters would shut the hell up. Because, like, a guy dies, and, like, this character's like, no. You're like, ugh. Because every time they talk, it's like, I'm reminding you, you're playing a video game. It's like, man, damn it. Okay. So, like, yeah, you play JRPGs for the story first and gameplay elements later.
I love dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like dialogue, so I like talking.
One of the games I played the longest ever was Dragon Quest XI, and that thing was a storybook experience because it has like a lot more emotion and a lot deeper.
And it's a silent protagonist.
Yeah, you still get to pick his choices, but it's like a bonding experience with like these characters that like you just play around with. And like in the whole world, it's like a little hard to explain, but it's a storybook experience. So you're involved in more in the world and all these characters and like the bonds that you have with each other and like all these characters, because that's what really drew me in. It's like it's the first Dragon Quest game that I've ever played, and I was intrigued by the world that they all roamed around in, like the Tree of Yggdrasil and all that, and like all these monsters are just like super weird looking, and like the story was just really intriguing. because like and that's the very beginning, so it's not really a spoiler, but it's just like you're pretty much an orphan child, and you're supposed to be the savior. Like before you became an orphan child, they knew that you were the savior. So now the whole story is, can you really live up to that expectation and like all the sacrifices that everyone took to save you, this one child that's supposed to save the world. And then throughout the entire game, it's like one tragedy after another. And then the part that takes you to like the post game, the part where you think that you've already beaten the game, is like it just goes even deeper into the story, and it's just like even one tragedy after another, and it's just like, oh cool, it gets even worse. But obviously you've already bonded with the characters this long. It was like, you gotta know how the story really ends.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's like one of the longest games I ever played. It was like I continued playing it because I was involved in the story and all the characters. Meanwhile, like for Halo, it was like in the very beginning of Halo, it's like you just play because it's fun. There's like later on they didn't really delve into like the lore aspect of all that until like Halo 2 or Halo 3. We're like, oh, now you know what like the Covenant and like the what is it, prophecy and all that like really goes into, and like how deep it is. And like also Destiny 1 didn't even have like a story in the beginning. Like
it still doesn't.
Well, it's like in westerns, there's like more RPG rather than story because it's just hard to make a good story. But JRPGs nail it most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's like if you want a gaming experience, you go for, if you want action and adventure mainly, you go for a Western RPG. And if for a JRPG, if you want like an above more of an above of average gaming experience and a lot of story.
I think a very whimsical RPG that came out on PS3 that really kind of nails like gameplay and it's a very awesome like story is Ni no Kuni, the first one.
Yeah.
It has fun battles. It has that monster catching thing, so it kind of has like, you know, Pokemon, but in like a Studio Ghibli like style. And it's like action combat where you're playing as the little monsters. The story is very good, and each town that you go to really is like a solid story beat of like the next chapter of the storybook that you're reading, and it's really awesome. Like a really good example of like story first, but it's not only relying on its story to push you. The gameplay itself is also really fun. So it nails like both parts to push you to the end of the game. So it never feels like an issue.
Yeah, I do remember I'd have played Ni no Kuni once, but there was like some aspects of it that bothered me. The problem is I don't remember exactly what it was, if it was story related or if it was more gameplay. But the grinding in it is like there's like that much, there's not that much grinding in that game, but it is somewhat required in some parts because it does have like some power curves. But the story itself was pretty solid. I think the issue that I had was near the end, where it just made some stuff redundant.
But are you talking about the original Ni no Kuni or the one where you play as the president?
No, I never played the one where you play as president. I only played the original, Wrath of the White Witch.
That one is, yeah, the second one is kind of funny. It's just like you're just rallying a kingdom and taking over everyone. I'm trying to bring peace.
Yeah. But it's just like Dragon Quest was one of them, and then I already explained Valkyrie Profile. That one has like a lot more story, more in the beginning part than the end. It also has like post game stuff. But like another one is like Kingdom Hearts, where it's like and I played almost every single Kingdom Hearts minus the mobile ones. That didn't interest me at all. But like pretty much the first 2 hours is just story. Like I played Kingdom Hearts 2 a bunch, and like the tutorial is 2 hours long because it's the entire time that you play as Rox instead of Sora.
Do you consider Kingdom Hearts a JRPG?
Yes,
I
very
don't know.
much.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
kind of on the
I'm just
fence
curious.
about it, but like I could see how it would be perceived that way because it kind of plays more like an action adventure game, but it has all of the like stat tracking and side quests and stuff that like a like JRPG, like a turn-based game would have.
I mean, that's
It's
why I
just
was asking. I was just curious.
yeah.
Yeah, like Kingdom Hearts has like the story of a JRPG, but the longevity of it's not. If you just go straight forward with just a story, it's not as long as like a regular game, but it does have a crap ton of side stuff.
That's
Like it has
interesting.
yeah, it has like a bunch of mini games. It has like extra stuff on the side that are not even remotely acquired. It's just like
Stupid
a
ass
lot of
gummy
optional
ship.
stuff. Yeah, like gummy ship missions. You have regular mini games like on pretty much in just Pooh Bear World, and then like
Yeah.
and also like yeah,
Well,
Give me some
specifically-
honey, Sora.
God damn it!
bring it over. Well, that's so. Do we want to jump into some trivia, guys?
Fuck, are we already running out of time?
I mean, I'm the one who's running out of time. You guys are okay.
Okay, well, I'll just be quick about it. Question 1.
Okay.
In Dragon Quest, what is the enemy called that is blue and shaped like an onion? Is it A, Draki, B, Ghost, C, Droll, or D, Slime?
Slime.
D.
The answer was Slime. Good job. All right, let's...
All right, the
Pissing
most
me off a
brain dead
little bit
fucking
because
dribbling
I
idiot
thought-
question we've all gotten right.
When you said shaped like an onion, I was like, wait a second, what? I never really thought of it
He's
looking
shaped like an onion. He has a little dewdrop.
I guess that makes sense, but I've never made that comparson in my.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't either, but
All right.
Slime, the weakest character except in Konosuba.
All right. Nice. All right, question 2. In Kingdom Hearts, the Olympus Coliseum, which enemy do you fight in the gold match? Is it A, Cerberus, B, Ice Titan, C, Rock Titan, or D, Sephiroth?
In gold?
The gold match.
all I know is that you fight Sephiroth at some point. It's either Cerberus or
It's at the
Sephiroth. That's
end.
all I know. I don't know. I don't play
I
Kingdom
thought
Hearts.
I thought it was Hades. Wait, so it's like
No, isn't Hades the boss?
I'm gonna
Because
say
he's
it's the
asking like the
Ice Titan.
Colosseum.
Well, in the Colosseum, you can repeat fights, but each one has a different boss at the end. But Ice Titan is literally just the Ice Titan. There's like no gauntlet or anything. You just fight the boss. I'm gonna go with the Rock Titan.
The answer was the Ice Titan.
That's Okay.
That's points, bro.
All right.
I just know I just know
the
Sephiroth
Kingdom
is a
Hearts
super
question. I
boss.
was supposed to get it right.
Yeah,
Hey, listen.
disappointment.
Listen. You got the Kingdom Hearts shit wrong. Corey got that Zelda shit wrong. I'm waiting for
was
my
kinda
turn.
right.
I'm gonna fuck
His turn.
something up. Yeah.
All right, so in question 3, in Final Fantasy VII, Barrett has an adopted daughter called Marlene. What is the name of her biological father? Is it A, Jacob, B, Walker, C, Dine, or D, Clyde?
C.
The answer
I'll
was... Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go with Corey. I don't know Final Fantasy.
Okay.
I'll go with Corey too because I never played Final Fantasy VII.
All right, the answer was Dine. Dine Wallace was Barrett's best friend and also Marlene's father, who also had a gun arm as well.
That specific fucking is like your dad. He was really cool. He had a gun arm.
Gun arm. I got a
Dad
gun
will
arm.
always have a gun arm.
We went to Gun Arms Anonymous a lot. That's
She
where we
looks
met.
down and she's like, "Is that why my gun's an arm and yours isn't, Dad?" She's like, "Yes."
No, your leg's a gun. You get that from your mom.
Makes a gun.
Like your dad has a gun arm. Your mom has guns on every limb. Your mom is Bayonetta.
Your mom has swords.
Cutting shit. All right, well, it looks like we'll be wrapping it up.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.